So let's talk now with CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid, who's joining us every morning here on CB24 Breakfast to break it down. Scott, it looked like it was all going to be foreign interference yesterday, and then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, U.S. President Trump comes out and announces these tariffs. That's got, Mark Carney going from Liberal leader to Prime Minister. How do you assess how this is going to be impacting this campaign? Because it kind of has echoes of the provincial campaign, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Look, in one fell swoop, Donald Trump has completely changed this election. And we expected and worried that this would occur, but it has now occurred. And it propels us into an entirely new phase. And, to take the politics out of it for 1 second, that phase is fundamentally, it's defined by fear. Fear that hundreds of thousands of people could lose their jobs in the auto sector and those who rely on the auto sector, fear of economic harm, fear of economic slowdown. And so this puts enormous pressure on every single one of the campaigns. So, Carney, we see that he comes off the campaign trail. He's forced to put on the prime minister's hat, convene the cabinet, and now he has the very tricky task of figuring out exactly how to retaliate. The mood of the country is punch back and punch back hard. Donald Trump has also said that if we do so, he will make tariffs that much tougher, and he will exert that much more economic harm. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the prime minister plays his cards. Then you've got Pierre Poilievre. His campaign has been criticized often, including by me, for not really focusing on Trump and tariffs sufficiently, trying to run a campaign as though it were last year, as though we're still talking about just a basic routine political campaign of time for a change. How's he going to respond today? He's giving a large speech in British Columbia in early afternoon. This is going to test every single one of the campaigns, but more than anything, especially with next week's new round of tariffs coming after these, we're in a completely new ballgame here. We're in a completely different place. And people are really anxious. They are literally worried they're going to get pink slips and they're going to lose their jobs next week. That's what's at stake suddenly.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's focus on Pierre Poilievre's campaign. He held a rally with thousands of people, kind of showing that he still has momentum despite what the polls are showing. But every time Trump makes headlines, the person who seems to be benefiting is Liberal leader Mark Carney. So with Pierre Poilievre kind of focusing a few days ago on social issues like dental care, child care plan, he's not going to touch those things. Is that going to help his campaign now to kind of reverse his messaging on those things?
Well, he's going to have to return to the core issue. I mean, you cannot steer the ship around Donald Trump. He is the iceberg that confronts our politics and our future. So Pierre Poilievre today is going to have to amplify his language, amplify his focus on Donald Trump, and more importantly, he's going to have to begin the task, and he's only got about 4 weeks left to do it, of persuading Canadians that in the face of Donald Trump's aggression, he, Pierre Poilievre, is the right, best, most qualified leader to meet that moment. And the challenge is that every time we're talking about Trump, every time this threat of tariffs arises, Canadians look between the leaders and they say, Mark Carney seems better experienced, more calm, more collected, more prime ministerial, and that's what we need, a manager-in-chief. So the challenge for Poilievre is to figure out what is his specific way to get into this discussion and to out-Carney when it comes to taking on Trump.
Boy, that's a challenge, too. And then yesterday, even in his remarks, Premier Doug Ford really praising Carney about the way he's handling the situation, really not giving any help at all to his federal counterpart, Pierre Poilievre. And again, I just see the echoes of the provincial campaign being layered on top of what's happening right now federally.
Yeah.
I think you're so right, guys. I mean, there really is echoes of the roadmap we watched in the Ontario campaign, where Doug Ford was, very often having to interrupt his campaign to go to the United States, to focus on the trade war. And, in this situation, I think we're also reminded of the importance of premiers. Like, we're going to see in the middle of this election now the return of the premier. So Doug Ford, a conservative premier in the largest province in the country, suddenly seems much more aligned with Carney. Who was Carney's first call last night as prime minister? It was to Doug Ford. Does this mean that maybe we're going to see Doug Ford returning to the threats to use electricity exports as a lever in these discussions? And he's not the only premier on the map. Today, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith
Yep.
is in the United
Florida.
States meeting with right-wing podcaster Ben Shapiro. And her argument has been, we need to appease Donald Trump. We need to cut side deals, keep energy off the table, when we all know that energy may be the only ace we have in our deck. So watch for that tension. And then again, that's going to cause real pressure on Pierre Poilievre. Is he going to stand cheek to jowl with Danielle Smith if she says, I want to lay down in front of the United States president, or is he going to stand firm?
Yeah, and, is it a message that he isn't reprimanding her for what she's doing? So, so much to watch for on day 5 of this election campaign. CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Always a pleasure, Scott. You've got a busy few days ahead and until the election, so we'll chat again tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Serious times, scary days.
Yeah, it is.